awakening you. The answers are within.
Welcome to the Awakening You podcast, reminding you that the answers are within. My name is Scott Goyette, and I'm your host. Each week in this podcast, I will be sharing some simple yet very useful tools to help you dive deep and discover how infinitely powerful you really are. The show is based on specific growth models created by the Go Love Now movement that will help you choose love and move through your fears. The love model, LOVE, stands for listening, observing, voicing, and empathizing. The fear model, FEAR, stands for forgiving, eliminating beliefs that no longer serve you and may have never served you, accepting yourself and others where you or they are at in their journey, and rising up and becoming resilient. During each podcast, my amazing guests will share their experience with using these tools and how you might benefit from using them as well. All information shared during this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Nothing from this podcast should supersede the directions of a doctor or mental health professional. And today's guest is a great friend of mine, my brother from another mother. This guy has come into my life like a storm, and we've been doing so much together over the past month or two. You might know him because he's also a podcast host of the Speaking to the Heart network. Please welcome Christopher Rausch. Hey, Christopher.
What's up, Scott? How you doing, man? Thanks for the introduction. I love it.
I'm doing good. Just enjoying this quarantine and staying inside my own brain and learning a lot from myself. How about you?
Yeah, kind of sort of the same. Yep. Just taking it day by day, just helping people, serving people, and then periodically having my own moments where I have to go, whoa, okay, I'm human too. Shit.
I know, right? Yeah, no, we've been talking about that quite a bit. It's, how do you get the opportunity out of the problem and not focus on all these things that are perceived as wrong when there's so much good and so much potential? So I want to ask you a couple questions. So I've actually saved some of these questions for this show specifically, just like you did to me when you interviewed me on your show.
Yep.
I want to jump right in because you and I have been talking about quite a bit. Some of the things that are going on right now with people is we've been in such a do mode. We've been in do. We're on that treadmill of life and we're not living. We're just existing. And now that we're forced to be in our own heads, a lot of that pain and those recycled traumas, they're coming back up and they really do stem from childhood. And so we're seeing a lot of the inner children exposed. It seems sad because we're seeing a lot of people's perception of what this world is, and a lot of gloom is showing up, and then others are fine, depending on where they were in their development and their trauma. You've mentioned to me a couple times, but I've never really gotten the full story. You talked about in your childhood, there was a point in time that you were homeless. Yep. And I just really want to start right there because so many of us are saying, oh, all these things are bad or this isn't working for me, but we still have stability. We still have a home. Tell me about that and how that just affected you until today. And is that showing up right now?
Wow. Great question, Scott. And thanks again for having me on your show. I appreciate it. Yeah, that was an interesting experience. It was May 10th, 1982. That was the last day we lived in our house. And we moved from the house into a 1969 Country Squire station wagon with the wood paneling on the side. And it was my mom, myself, and along with us was 18 cats and 2 dogs. It was a bit overwhelming, to say the least, going from a 4-bedroom house, being a 7th grader, 13 years old, just going into puberty and trying to figure things out. Then all of a sudden going into a completely volatile situation, a completely uncertain situation where I went from being a little kid to pretty much being an adult like overnight and having to survive and figure out how we're going to eat and figure out what the next steps were. So yeah, that was I'll say a traumatic experience in my life, but also a very growing and educational experience in my life to determine what it is that I did not want, which helped propel me to where I'm at today.
That's amazing. It's interesting, the parallel between that and what's going on in the world right now is you had no choice. You were forced into that.
Yep.
You wake up one day as a 13-year-old, and I've got a 13-year-old daughter. So as you're speaking that, I'm imagining her in the same space and how she'd react. That's a lot to process at 13. So you are plugged into that situation with or without your acceptance. That was just something that's going to happen. And I think a lot of people are sitting in the same space right now where they're plugged into this quarantine. They might have lost jobs. It's a new normal. They're sitting in their own headspace and they're reacting. What advice, based on the fact that you've already practiced for this in your early years, what advice would you give people right now to manage this situation, whether it's good or bad, because it is change?
That's another great question, Scott. And I've said this over and over before, but it really is the fact you have to ask yourself, is life happening to you or for you? And sometimes in the middle of the situation, when it's terrible and it's tragic and it's uncertain and you're scared and you're depressed and you're angry and you're frustrated and you're all these different things, you don't see that. They often say you don't see the picture when you're in the frame. We always talk about hindsight. Hindsight is 20/20. When we look back from the experiences that we went through that really challenged us, and sometimes we got desperate, and sometimes we were wondering if we were going to make it through, we look back on those experiences as the major experiences in our life that caused us to grow and caused us to really learn and look at things differently. And that's the major fact of it, is when we're in those situations, we have to have the wherewithal to say, okay, what am I supposed to get out of this? What am I supposed to learn? How am I supposed to grow from this? And most people, because they live in a fear or scarcity mindset, they run, they retreat, they go to the short-term gratifications, they go to the ignorance. Oh, if I move, if I change jobs, if I get out of another relationship, then it'll be okay. But I call it the destination solution never works. You have to confront it. You have to go towards it and realize it's happening for you, and that eventually you're going to become stronger from it. So that's the way I look at things. And just to actually clarify, it's interesting you just said that. When we were homeless, I did have a choice. I've forgotten about that. So thank you for asking that question. I could have went and lived with my grandparents, my grandmother or my grandfather, but it was something in me at 13 years old. My mom and I had been a team since we were in Inglewood and through all the other stuff that we had to go through. I couldn't let her be by herself. I couldn't imagine her sleeping in the car by herself and trying to do it all by herself, because she had been abandoned by everybody else in her life. And so I think somewhat, even at an early age, psychologically, I knew I had to be there for her. And for some reason, actually, now when I look back at it, that might have been the point in my life where I knew I had to go on this journey, because honestly, in the 7th grade, I was fighting, I was doing drugs, I was getting into a lot of trouble. And I tell people that the homeless situation may have prevented me from becoming a convict, may have prevented me from becoming a bully, may have prevented me from doing so many different things that I would have regretted later. So I did have a choice. And there was choices during that time where I could have left her, but I didn't until I ultimately did.
Man, that's amazing. And I love the fact that you recognize that, because, when we're somebody who hasn't filled our cup with love, I talk about the love model all the time, and we've shared that a bit. If I don't have my cup filled with love and it's filled with other emotions, especially fear, the tendency is I want to fill it with something. So it's going to get filled with something. And those things become extrinsic addictions. If you're intrinsically rewarded, like right now where we're sitting at, we're filling our cups and we want to let that just fill over to serve others. But at that point in your life, whether you recognized it or not directly, you could have done one or two things. You could have gone out and you could have done drugs more. You could have fought more. You could have gotten more trouble. But you took that energy and you said, my mom needs me. Even that in itself is an addiction or an extrinsic reward. You're trying to serve, but think that might have saved you. And it's amazing because we're doing the same thing right now. Like somebody who used exercise to fill that void of the noise that's in their mind, and then the gym's closed right now. They're forced to come up with something else. Maybe it's art, maybe it's cooking, maybe it's getting closer to their family members, but we're forced to find some other value that extrinsically supports ourselves. So it's not me saying I'm filled with love and I'm a brew over. It's me still finding validation, but we're forced to get out there and connect in different ways. Mm-hmm. What kind of suggestion can you give right now to others to identify with that and find those things that they can connect to serve themselves in a time like now?
The first thing that comes to mind, Scott, actually is just to be open. Just to be open to alternatives, just to be open to different opportunities. I think a lot of people get stuck in this closed-mindedness where they're like, okay, I go to the gym and I go to work and I go home and I make my meals and then I do my laundry and I go to sleep, and they're like in this habit because it's safe, it's certain, and it's comfortable. And I just encourage people, through coaching and everything else and just being online is just take a step back. And what do you really, really want? Not what your parents wanted for you, not what society wanted for you, not what religion wanted for you, not what anybody else wanted for you. What do you want for yourself? And to explore those things and just to say, hey, the gym is closed, but maybe this is a great opportunity. I've never tried Pilates. Now I'm going to try Pilates. I'm going to see what that is about. And just as somebody who is exactly you described, I've gone to the gym my entire life to keep my mental health where it is. And so through those processes, I started developing, as my back got hurt and everything, I couldn't lift as much anymore. So I was like, okay, I have to change my strategy. I can't be this big, bulky, muscle head guy anymore. And now I'm like, okay, now it's time to be trim. Let's see what it's like to lose 20 pounds of muscle and just to be trim and not to have bulging arms and stuff like that. I said, let me just try Pilates. And I was like, at first, I would have honestly said, that's a girl's thing. That's pussy. That's shit. That's nothing. Yoga, what this yoga crap? No, don't even talk to me about yoga. I bench press, 200 pounds or whatever. And then I got into it and I was like, okay, shift in perspective. You try to hold that child's pose. That one's easy.
Downward dog hurts the shoulders, man. As strong as we are. I know, dude. I'm sitting there next to a woman. I'm like, I feel weak.
I loved it. I went and did this class with a bunch of women at where I worked. We had a Pilates and a yoga class. And they said, come on, Chris, do it. And there was like all these women. I was like, okay, I'm going to go do it. And I was worn out. I was like, I'm like, my heart rate monitor was on. It was like 110. And I'm standing there holding this pose, like on one foot. And I'm like, holy crap, this is really a strenuous workout. This is great. And it was good for my mind because I had to challenge myself to balance. It's like, okay, I got all these people around me. So I just encourage you guys out there, if you're thinking you're stuck in that situation, there's so much stuff you could do. I was just swimming the other day and I was like, what kind of workout can I figure out in my pool? And without looking at water aerobics and everything else, I was like, I started doing stretching. I started doing push-ups off the side. I started doing squats. I started doing this paddling. And I came up with a 45-minute workout that exhausted me just in there. So keep your mind open and go try new things. That's what this is about, Scott. It's about, I think you said it before, or it's something that rattles in my brain a lot. Are you living or are you existing? And when you're living, you're trying new stuff. You're trying new foods. You're experimenting with different places. You're open to new cultures. You're open to whatever it is. And you get outside that box and you realize there's a lot more out there to enjoy than just what you're enjoying right there in your own little small world.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly worded. So one of the things that you started with, and I think this is super important, super hard to tackle, is what do you want? That's the big question. And we spoke about this the other night on one of the shows that we were doing together. So many of us have had our identity built into ourselves. I mean, we all have to a point. Our parents, raised us until, 5. They were telling us to do everything. There was nothing that was around. So as we start to come up with our own thoughts, we think we want something based on the way we were developed. So here's a question, and let's try to help our audience members understand this. How do I know what I want? Like, really, how do I know what I want? Because there's never been a better time than when we're sitting in our own mind to figure out, what do I want? Because I think I want to go play basketball, but I also think I want to do shows and serve others. I think I want to eat until I can't see straight, but I also want to be in great shape. I want to make a bunch of money, but money's not important to me. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I want. How do we get other people to really find what it is they truly want deep down inside?
Another great question, Scott. 2 immediate answers when you were saying that. One of the things that I've had people sit there say, I don't know what I want. And so I immediately say, what do you not want? What do you hate? What do you dislike? What makes you uncomfortable? What pisses you off? And they'll say about 20 different things. And I'm like, okay, the opposite is what you want. So if you're mad about this, then maybe you switch to the other side. So you figure out what it is that you don't want and you work to correct that. For me, I don't want to live in a world where people hate each other and they judge each other by their skin color and they judge by their sexuality or whatever else. So one of the things that I want in life is to provide unity, is to bridge people and to speak in such a way that I get people to see that we're more the same than we are different. So figure it out that way. What it is that you don't want, and then you figure out what it is that you want. You want unity. You want love. I boiled it down, Scott, honestly, when I sit there and analyze that question, because it's super huge, it boils down to people want significance. When you think about it, if you make somebody feel significant, then you've got the world in your hand. You make somebody feel loved. You make them feel proud. You give them confidence. So I think in that way, you look at what you don't want, and then you figure out what it is that you want. My second part of that answer is you got to think with the end in mind. With my coaching clients, what I do is I sit there and say, okay, where do you want to end up? If you're 30 years old right now, where do you see your life going? What is it that you want to accomplish? What is your legacy? And so I get them to write their eulogy, and I get them to write it in such a way. How do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be a great dad? Do you want to be a philanthropist? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to have cures? Do you want to create an awesome movie? You have music inside of you, art inside of you. What is it that you want to be remembered for? And let's start working backwards from that to create that plan so that you stay focused and you don't get caught up in some of the short-term things that kind of, take us off our highway to our destination. Goes back to the other part too, Scott. It's honesty. You have to be honest with yourself. So many people are not honest with themselves. I'll dig into them. I mean, I'm the no excuses coach. You know that. I was just digging into somebody recently. It was, who are you? And they couldn't figure out who you are. And I just kept digging. I said, I'm going to dig until you're pissed off at me. And they're like, well, don't do that. And I said, no, I am. I said, we're going to figure it out right here, right now. I said, that's why you have me here. And we just kept going. And I'm this, and bam, bam, bam. It was over a Zoom call. And they were just like, holy shit, I didn't think that was going to come out of my brain. I'm like, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for that stuff that you buried down deep inside. Scott, when you think about it, when you were a kid, what did you want to be? What did you want to be? Did you want to be a fireman? Did you want to be a space astronaut? Did you want to be a race car driver? Did you want to be a football player? For you, probably a basketball player. When you think about that, and then we're told, no, that's stupid. That's not safe. That's blah, blah, blah. And we're told to stamp down our goals and our dreams. And then realize, then we get to our 40s or 50s or 30s or whatever it is. And we go, wow, I forgot about that. I forgot I had that intuition that I wanted to be a race car driver. Well, maybe I can't be a race car driver now, but I could do these things. I can get into racing or whatever. So my answer is that to be open, to look at what you don't want and go away from that, and to be honest with yourself. What about you? What do you think?
No, I think it's perfect. And it's funny that you were bringing those things up. And I was actually giving those examples in the beginning. You know, I know the answers to some of the things I was sharing. I was just kind of putting those out there for people. For instance, as a kid, I always thought basketball was super important to me. And like you, when you went to spend that time with your mom versus going with your grandfather in homelessness, and you could have done something else, there was a protection in basketball for me. I knew that it would keep me from going out and doing drugs, going out and partying. You go to practice all the time, you're building yourself. And so basketball has always been a space for me when my mind got reckless and my mind was accepting thoughts that weren't the thoughts I should be aligning with. I could hide there. So it was my meditation. So when I say I want to be a basketball player, I've gone pretty deep. And I think it's not even that I want to be a basketball player. I want to hide from my own mind. So the universe has taken away the gym right now from me. And, you know, my preaching to other people and coaching exactly what you do. I bring them the same thing, the eulogy on your deathbed. Tell me about yourself. Are you happy? Are you comfortable with that? So one of the things I realize is I've been literally an expert saying all these things that are hobbies. My hobbies are literally just distractions for me to get out of my own mind. And so I'm telling everybody else, you know, do these things that you love. I'm not even deep down sure that I love basketball. Basketball is the best thing that I found to hide from myself. Because think of this, you can do drugs, there's a destructive element. You can go chase woman, destructive element. You can eat too much, destructive element. Basketball, you just get in better shape. Yeah, you sprain an ankle, you hurt your knee, but I can go hide in that. And so now when that's taken away from me, I'm sitting in my own brain, and all the coaching that I'm sharing with others, I'm stepping in saying, wait a second, am I full of crap? Because now I'm actually forced into more meditation and more thinking and diving a little bit deeper the places where I've made shit up. So to that point, let's talk a little bit about, you know, coaching, because one of the things with the awakening you, the whole point of that is the answers lie within you. So do you need me or do I need you? This is what I think coaching can be for somebody. All the answers lie within you, but sometimes you need a mirror to look and see it. And so a coach can be that mirror for you. They can be a motivator to help you intrinsically see all your abilities. The second thing it can be is an accountability coach. There's multiple things in there. Let's talk to people a little bit from a coaching perspective. How can an individual elevate themselves through some of the coaching tips that we would share? Because you've already said one, what do you want to leave as a legacy? Are you on the path to being yourself? Another thing is, are you living in an analytical mind or a creative mind? Are you still creating, which is what we wanted to do as a kid? What are some coaching tips we can give our listeners right now that they can take away and start moving with right now?
Sure. I want to go back to just a second what you were saying before, Scott, about basketball and about it being an escape. What about if that is your form of expression? And rather than being an escape, yeah, it might be an escape from your mind, from getting out of your mind, but maybe it's that form of expression that helps you be a part of who you are. And for me, like when I think about drinking, for example, sometimes I will drink on purpose because I know that that's the gateway to get to my feelings faster. Like sober, I'm fine. I'm in control of everything. But depending on my mood, I need to go down that rabbit hole. I need to figure out what is it that I'm being too strong about. I have 6 or 7 drinks and I listen to the 70s playlist and I sing a little bit, and all of a sudden these emotions start coming up and I start thinking, and I get sad and I'm like, okay, why am I sad? I go down that rabbit hole to figure out what it is that I needed to explore and address to get out of that situation. So it might be a situation where it's, just your form of expression. That's maybe you got some frustration inside and that's your way of manifesting and getting it out and having that contact and having that solidarity with a family and bros and just having something that you can be energized with. So it might be something that's actually a positive situation for you. One of the things I wanted to talk about too is, at least for me, when I'm unhealthy and when I'm not focusing on my health, both my mental health and my physical health, I know that my outcomes and my results and the actions that I go through aren't as strong and as committed as they are when I take my health very seriously. Not saying that I'm not going to have fun, but I go through these ebbs and flows where I'm either, drinking and eating like crap, but I'm still decent shape. You're in great shape. And I'm like, nah, I am and I'm not. That's
all relative.
That's why I did 75 hard last year. I did it over in a day. I was like, I knew about it and I was going to do it. And I'm like, that's 75 days with no sugar and da da da. And I just snapped. And I'm like, Chris, you need to do it. You have to do it. If you don't want to do it, you need to do it. You have to do it. I helped with a guy that's actually doing it now. He's on day 71, I think, of 75 hard. Wasn't going to do it. And he did it. And he goes, it just snapped. He goes, I saw you do it and I saw the results that you were getting. So for the people listening, you have to take your health very seriously. Just the mere fact of drinking water every day. Some people say that's so stupid, but our body's like 85% water. And if you're drinking soda every day and you're drinking other crap, Red Bulls and stuff like that, you're pouring toxicity in your body. Your body needs hydration. I know when I'm fully hydrated, I drink at least a gallon of water a day, even on a bad day. When I'm not hydrated, I don't think as clear. And then I want that short-term gratification. Oh yeah, it's 2:00 in the afternoon on a Saturday. I can have a drink and we can just sit here and watch movies all day. I'll be lazy. Oh, I deserve to be lazy. And I'm like, do it. So we have to have our health. We have to take that seriously. And sometimes we don't take our health seriously because somebody in our family isn't taking theirs seriously. So we kind of slow down to stay with them, because if we get too healthy and get too motivated to do new things, then other people are going to be like, hey, what are you doing? That's stupid. Why are you leaving me? So we got to think about those facts. You have to know, like what we're saying is, what is it you want? And you have to stop your excuses. Somebody sits there and comes to me like, I want to do this, but I don't have time. And I'm like, well, you need to make time. I mean, J-Lo has 24 hours in a day. A-Rod has 24 hours in a day. Elon Musk has 24 hours in a day. How are you spending your time? Are you focused on what the end result you want it to be? Or are you just merely going through the motions and playing the someday game? Oh, someday when the kids are out of school, someday when I get a new job, someday when we pay off the house, someday when this. There's no someday. I mean, there's only moments. So when you consider the value in those moments and you really play into the fact that if you don't want any regrets in life, you have to act today. And like you said, you have to get a coach, you have to get an accountability partner, you have to get a best friend. And a best friend is somebody who tells you the truth when you ask a question like, hey, what do you think's going on? Oh, you're great. Your life is awesome, because you're afraid to tell them the truth. That's not helping them grow. So you have to put yourself in situations that are cause you to think, cause you to grow, and cause you to expand and get uncomfortable with yourself in order to really, truly have, in my opinion, a kick-ass life.
Man, that brings up an amazing point too. And maybe there's something we should finish up on, because we did have a show on this and you know how important this is. Here's the simple reality. The minute we start showing our truth, the minute we start stepping up, the minute we say that we're going on a fast track to enlightenment, we're going to lose some people around us. Because when you show up and other people are sitting in their place of comfort, they're going to go, that's not who you really are. You're just trying to show off. And they're literally going to just rip you down. They're going to try to drag you back to them. So this is what we're asking people. We're saying extrinsically release yourself from others, become intrinsically motivated, and go out there and be the best you possible. But the 5 people who are closest to you right now, I can guarantee you, love you for the you are now. Now listen to this though. Let's say, for example, you've got a best friend and you guys always used to smoke pot together and get drunk together. And that person's plateaued, and they're plateaued in their own mind. They've said, this is what life is. I've got a good job. My girlfriend's good enough. Here we are. The minute you accelerate, they're going to say, you're selling out. You're not who you are. You're listening to these stupid shows. I don't know who this coach is, but they don't know you. I know you. That's going to be devastating to you, because what you're doing is you're shedding skin. You're getting rid of the old identity.
I've done that multiple times.
Me too, man. And I still love those people and those moments that, I had. I mean, I just can't be a part of that energy anymore, because my energy is elevated. My vibration's elevated. So what do we tell other people right now? Because we're not going to sugarcoat this at all. If you want to elevate yourself and you want to be the greatest you can be, and you want to be utilizing the brilliance that you were given to live this existence, it's not going to be easy. Hear that one more time. It's not going to be easy. Mm-mm. But I'll ask you this question, Chris. Is it going to be rewarding?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I encourage you listeners, if you guys don't know who David Goggins is, David Goggins, I mean, that guy got introduced to my life last year, and I can't remember exactly how it was. I think somebody told me to go listen to him, and I was just like blown away at his ability. He transformed his life. I mean, he went through Navy SEALs twice. I mean, he did all these things. And he just kept overcoming. And I'm like, what is the secret sauce in this guy's brain that causes him to do this? And he said, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. The truth of the fact is, Scott, and I've lived this in my life many times, is because I'm such an empathic person and such a compassionate person, I don't want to give up on anybody. But I realized, I think you and I were talking about it the other day, if you guys are open to listening to this for just a second, just open your minds for a minute, because I was closed-minded about this a few years ago. But when you look at the fact that we are spirits having a human existence here, and the fact that there is a probability that we can come back multiple times in this existence to learn lessons for our soul so we can move on to like eternity or whatever it might be. Because people sit there and say, like, I feel like I've been here before. when you look at those lessons, and if you run away from those lessons, that's what's going to hurt you. And you figure out that maybe you've been here, your soul, human spirit 25 times, but then somebody that you love and you care about so much, they've only been here 7 times, and they're stuck in that fear, and they realize that, oh, I have to do everything that's certain and comfortable, and life is supposed to be easy and predictable. You have to realize that it just may be you that has to move on to cause that person enough pain, enough situation in their life that they're going to take their actions differently also. They call it tough love. When you think about codependency and things of that nature, and I've lived that, and I've tried to save these people, and I just realize, you have to continue moving on, and you have to continue doing what's good for your soul. And if you really want to live, then you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that is a sucky thing. Like you said, Scott, it's not easy, and downright, it's fucking hard sometimes. It is hard to move on. It's hard to do those things, but you just have to take one step at a time, one moment at a time, one decision at a time, one choice at a time. Viktor Frankl wrote that book, Man's Search for Meaning. And if you have never read that book, guys, go out and read it, because it taught me one fundamental thing. And nobody could tell you what to think and feel. If somebody says, oh, that person made me mad. No, that person did not make you mad. You allowed a reaction to happen in your conscious mind that says, I'm offended by that, and here's why. And you go back to a story that was written in your mind years and years ago, and you say, see, that's why I'm mad about that, because something happened. You have to let that stuff go and realize it's part of your journey, and it's like a little scar. It's like, oh, I got a scar, but I healed from it, and I grew from it, and I became stronger. Going back to the workout analogy, we go to work out, and what do? We put ourselves through intentional pain because we want to see the results. We want to feel better. We want to have better vascular systems. We want to live longer. We want to do all these things. So we have to cause pain to our muscles in order for them to grow. And that's the same exact thing with our mind. You have to go cause your mind pain. You have to go constantly learn and figure out what it is that's blocking you, and not ignore it, because guess what, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to get to be 70, 80 years old or even earlier, and you're going to go, wow, I wasted my entire life pretending to be something that I wasn't for people, trying to get that significance, trying to get that love. And one more on this answer is the fact that, go pick up a book. It's called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. It was written by a hospice nurse. And there's actually an article online you can go see anyway. But the top regret from all these people that she helped as they passed away, their number one regret was the fact that they lived the life they thought they were supposed to live versus the life they wanted to live. And that, my friends, is all of your choice. And yes, it doesn't take balls. Yes, it takes tenacity. Yes, it takes guts, and it takes courage like no other. But the free fall, like Steve Harvey says, when you fall and you jump and you soar, it's so amazing. And you look at people with more compassion and more love, and yourself with more compassion and more love, because of those little kids inside of us are healing and growing and moving on. I wanted to ask you that same question. Where do you feel that people get stuck? Why do people get stuck? Why do people get and stay complacent and stay safe?
Oh, I think you nailed it. So I think it's very, very simple. All right. I think it's very important to understand that human beings have been built on the identities that have been given to us. And so we talked about it earlier. If you really, really, really want to look at it, I would say less than 5% of you is your creation, if that, because you are literally totally molded from 0 to 5. You start to go into other schools or whatever. It's always somebody else's information telling you what fact is. And you're graded according to, this is what the information is. If you get it wrong, it's wrong. I was talking to somebody today, and I think this is Dr. Singh, and I'm going to actually have her on the show at some point. We were talking about the idea of competition versus the idea of collaboration. And we've never been graded on collaboration in our entire life. So as you and I are talking about getting stuck or whatever, it's such an individual thing. Collaboration wouldn't allow somebody to be stuck because you'd always be carrying everybody with you. It's kind of like, in the Marines or like the Army or the Navy or whatever. It's no man left behind kind of thing. You're taking everybody with you. In the real world, we allow people to get stuck because we say that person is different. We love to other. Yeah. So imagine this. we do. I mean, dude, I've done it 50 times today. When I was whining to you today about certain people who are this or that or whatever, I'm othering like crazy because I'm thinking in my mind, how could you possibly believe those things? But here's the problem. We were trained that way. We were trained to compete. Learn this lesson, learn this, learn this, learn this. Here's what happens though. Let's say that you were somebody who learned all the lessons the way they were supposed to be learned. I was really good at that. I could get the good grades. I could win the awards, and everyone says, you know what you're talking about. So when I see somebody who doesn't think and process what I deem to be correctly, you're an idiot. Mm-hmm. Okay. So imagine if we were taught in school, there's another perspective. Everything still comes back to fact basis though. And we've used this term, used it last night. when we start to think about the basis of doing everything based on facts. So am I creating this belief based on facts in front of me? As long as there's a factual foundation, we can start moving. Now your opinion on the fact is acceptable. But when you lead with a lie and then create an opinion on the lie, that's what we've come to. So what's happening is people are getting stuck and they're rebuilding their foundation with their perception of new truths because they've recognized that their identity was built by somebody else. And here's what they don't realize. Now they're rebuilding it with another person's beliefs, calling it their own. This is scary as heck because we've opened our minds up. We've got the opportunity to take a lot of those old identity pieces and eliminate the old beliefs. And here we are, instead of saying, let's bring fact and new ideas into this and build it on what truly is me, we've replaced one person's belief for another. We see it, YouTube, conspiracy theory, whatever. So instead of rebuilding yourself and building a better you, you're actually building an even worse you.
And that's a great point, Scott. And just to dovetail off of that for a second, there's going to be many versions of you. And I realized that. I was just talking to somebody the other day, somebody else coaching, and I said, you're going to be, so-and-so 7.0, or you, in 10 years, you might be so-and-so 8.0. And that's the part of the growth and the process that we need to go through is that we can shed, old beliefs and situations based on the fact that we're going to always continue to grow. I may be 10 years from now, I may be a totally different person than I am today. And I welcome that because of the journey that I'm going on and the books that I'm reading and the people like yourself, I'm surrounding myself. I could be open up to so much more because I didn't realize I was going to be open up to this much now. Now I'm excited. Like, who am I going to be in another 10 years? I hope a better person and even a greater influencer. But I want to go back just a second, Scott, for the people, because we've been talking about 0 to 5. And that is so, so important. And when I explain to people, they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, okay, think about it. Just think about just the overview fact. Okay, we're told about Santa Claus. We're told about the Tooth Fairy. We're told about the Easter Bunny. And then we're told, no, those aren't true. And then we start as little kids, we know kids say the darndest things. Kids start saying, mommy, why is that lady so fat? Shh, 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 shh. Don't say that. Don't say that. Why? She's fat. No. You have to say a white lie. We're 4 or 5 years old and we're like, what's a white lie? Oh, that's when you kind of tell the truth, but you don't tell the truth. Oh, okay. So we're taught to lie, but we're told to tell the truth. Our teachers, are you telling the truth? Okay. I don't know if this is one of those situations where it's supposed to be a white lie or the truth. Well, if I lied, then I get out of it and I'm okay. So I still have your significance. I still have your approval. So then we go through life based on that identity. And then we're screwed up by other kids at school and other teachers at school. And then we have to remember that all of those adults, supposed adults that were there to guide and care for us, they were screwed up too. They were just doing the best they could based on their situations. And now, at least now today, we have so many resources. If you want to be a good parent, all you have to do is go on Google and figure it out. Back in our day when we were kids, they didn't have much like that. They had, emergent child psychology and Freud and all of their stuff. But, when you think about the stuff that we've gone through, yeah, it makes that case for the fact that we're fucked up for most of our life. And then we start having these awakening moments. It's like, no, wait a minute. I'm not what my mom says I was. I'm not this. And you start developing your own personality and you start getting straight. That's when you really start living. I just encourage you guys to think about that as part of your conditioning cycle. Most people, when they come to me for a coaching situation, I can determine it's something that happened between 0 and 5. And it's like this situation with a kid. And it's like, okay, how did you react to that? What did it make you feel? Oh, it made me feel like a piece of shit. Okay. How was your first job? Were you scared? Were you confident? No, I was worried about I was going to disappoint somebody and I was petrified and I kept screwing up because I was so petrified, and it just further instilled that belief. What are your thoughts on that, Scott? I mean, we've talked about that 0 to 5 thing, but what are your perspectives on that?
Oh, you're 100% correct. I mean, it's a very difficult thing because we always talk about breaking the cycle. You're a parent and you're in protection mode. Okay. We've lived in the amygdala for years to protect us and allow us functionality in this world. Like, we've got to run away when there's a tiger chasing us. We don't want to burn ourselves on fire. So we're teaching the kids the don'ts. I mean, think of the universe. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do this. And then we come up and we say, I want a great relationship. What will that relationship look like? I want one that doesn't include this, doesn't include this, doesn't include this. And you're giving all the negatives and the universe only understands positive. So what if we were telling our kid, be creative, try new things, love yourself more? The problem is we've got multiple kids in the house. We're working 2 jobs. We're just doing our best. And we're like, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. Don't play with that. You stop that. Even as enlightened as we are, we're going to go do this 10 times today and want to smack ourselves in the face and feel guilty. All of us, Chris, 3-year-old, I'd be doing the same thing. I can sit here and tell you how to do it, but I'm full of crap because one of my own kids almost hitting their eye out again because they're the perfect lineup for the coffee table. Like, why do you keep running there? Run anywhere in the house, but not there. And they keep doing it. It's amazing.
It's and so right now.
So here's the simple thing. Okay. we've got to do two things. We've got to understand we're infinite beings, first and foremost. So we've got time. And I've heard you say this many times before. We both said it. As long as we're moving forward, just don't be complacent and don't be stagnant. So even if one time we correct the language and we say, instead of the don't, we say, play over here instead. This is safer. And I want to make sure you're okay, right? Thank you, Jackson. Just once. Now we do it twice. Then we do it 3 times. Imagine that over the next 500 or 1,000 years. We've evolved. Now, if we want to take the challenge and try to evolve more quickly, we can do things for self-growth, but don't beat yourself up. There is nothing wrong with you. We're the evolution of human beings in a state of consciousness. And once we have consciousness and awareness, we just are going to notice all the flaws and the faults. The faults were not faults. They were components of us that served us in a moment. And so now in this evolutionary phase, we're beating ourselves up. No more beating yourself up. Heal. That's it. Just heal. Mm-hmm. So when we're looking at somebody, like you said, maybe they were only here 3 times and we were here 26 times, we're learning the lessons more quickly. Be the light, show them the way, and let's guide them. Now, I have difficulty with that. Do you know why? Because I'm a human being. So it doesn't matter how evolved I feel like I am. There's somebody in front of me, there's somebody behind me, but we're all walking each other home. And so if we just remember that and try to not attach the emotions that we put on all these events as so many negative ones, like fear, anger, sadness, bad person, can't stand that, don't do that. And we start saying, what can we do? And we start looking at hope and joy and deeper connection. Those shifts are going to evolve us more quickly. Mm-hmm. And individually, this is another thing that's important. Individually, we've got to take the step to make the changes ourselves. We don't have to worry about everybody else. And I'm speaking to myself as much as anybody else on that one. Once you start to learn things, you want everyone else to do it, and you want everyone to do it so you can change the world. The best way to teach everybody else is live it and live it consistently. I watch you do it. I watch your evolution. You say the same things every week. People might be like, why does he keep saying the same things? Do you want me to tell you why? Because that's consistency. But if you notice, there will be a new growth, like a new comment or a new belief every week for both of us. Mm-hmm. Someone's going to look back at our shows in 10 years and go, I know why I like those guys. They were consistent. They weren't lying. They were growing and doing it live on the fly. Because I noticed 5 years ago, you said this, and this day you said, well, that's how I used to feel, but I got new information, and here's the evolution of that thought. Mm-hmm. That's all we can do. That's it.
The simple analogy, Scott, and that was so beautifully said, by the way, so beautifully said. The simple analogies were computers. You know, what information are we putting in? Garbage in, garbage out. GIGO, whatever the fuck people call it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's about that. It's about just sitting there saying, you know what, maybe I'm tired of being tired. I just posted earlier, are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Because so many people are. I'm like, well, take out a book. You know, go read an Audible. Go start pursuing the things that frustrate you. Understand your childhood better. Understand other people better. You know, forgive. I mean, so many people won't forgive themselves. Oh, you know, I did drugs and I left my best friend by the side of the road and he got beat up and I've never forgiven myself. How's your best friend now? Is he normal? I don't even talk to him anymore. Okay, let it go. Forgive yourself. It was a situation that happened. If that didn't happen, maybe something else would have happened later on that was even worse. You know, you just have to look at that as a growth experience and not beat yourself up so badly about it. So many people are just like punishing themselves. They're punishing themselves unconsciously with food and with TV and with distractions and everything else. It's so sad. I'm like, why do you hate yourself? You know, I've asked people that, like, quite literally, like, I don't hate myself. I'm like, yes, you do. You really don't love yourself. You maybe don't hate yourself, but you really don't love yourself right now. And I dare you to tell me that you do. And they'll sit there and then it usually evolves into another conversation, usually involves in tears and stuff like that. But yeah, man, that was so beautifully said because it's so emphatically true. You know, I sit there and one of the things that upsets me, Scott, is being misunderstood. When I think about the things that really, really irritate me personally is being misunderstood. And one of the things I wish I could change, but I know I can't now, is that people that knew me 10 years ago, maybe see me on these things, they're still going to see me the same way. They're going to see me, oh, the Chris the party, or Chris the girl, the guy that chased girls, Chris, you know, the guy that did crazy shit, whatever, kind of like you, as a matter of fact.
100%, dude. You could be speaking for me right now. I'll just ditto this. Whatever Chris just said, valid for me too. Keep going.
Yeah. It makes me sad because it's like, no, I have changed. Yes, there is still a large part of me that's still that same person, but now I'm totally different. Like, for example, drinking, because drinking has come up in my life multiple times. I was told I was a functioning alcoholic. I was told this. And I was like, and I kind of started realizing, I'm like, that was my self-medication. That was my way to hide from the pain that I had to experience. And then when I stopped drinking, periodically I would stop drinking. I'm like, okay, this is the awareness mode. Okay, you're not, like you were just saying, people are in isolation. They're having to face their emotions and their feelings and their thoughts and their desires. That is awesome. That is so awesome. So I've taken those breaks and been able to do that. So now when I drink, I don't have to drink for the same reasons. I still drink because I enjoy it. It calms my mind down. As you can see, I'm very hyper. You know, I tried marijuana, I tried medication, I tried all that stuff, a few drinks, and I kind of just come down to feeling normal. I'm not like constantly in my head with 1,000 thoughts blasting. I asked my wife one day, I said, what are you thinking about? She goes, nothing. And I'm like, how? How do you not think about it?
My wife does that too. I'm like, what are you talking about?
And I gave her the analogy. And I gave it to my ADHD doctor one time. I said, I think I've finally been able to describe what goes on in my mind. She's like, what? And I said, you know, when you walk into a department store and you see the TVs in the back, and the TVs are all on one screen and everything's like all beautiful and flowing. You have 17 monitors or screens and they all have the same picture and the same sound. I said, my brain, they're all different stations and they're all volume 12. So that's what I have to process in my mind to deal with some of the stuff. And yeah, I could take medication and I did, but guess what? It took away who I was. It calmed me down, but then I was like melancholy. I was apathetic. I was really like, I don't care if people shoot themselves in the foot right now. They deserve it. And I was like, no, that's not me. That's not me. So I was like, okay, I need to figure out who I am and how to manage myself through working out and through being healthy and still having a little bit of party and still having a little bit of fun. And that evolution, that path is something I'm so super proud of. And before I would want to go back and try to tell those people I'm not the same person anymore, but it doesn't really matter because that was a chapter in my life. And I look at things as chapters. It's like when, you know, that chapter is good and I'm good with it and I'm so thankful for it. But now here's the new chapter, you know, 51 years old with a 3-year-old and doing these shows. It's like, that's my new chapter. And I'm not going to sit there and try to live in those years before. And I honestly, Scott, I tried that. I was like trying to get all my friends back together a couple of years ago for a 30th reunion of, it was 2017. I wanted to do a 30th reunion of the hair metal days and get all my friends back together. And I wanted to recreate the old times because I was like, why? That was then, this is now. Now you have a new thing and just kind of keep moving on. That's kind of my point, I guess, but in a roundabout way.
So one final question. How do you stay consistent in being today's Christopher Rausch in an ever-evolving world? How do you stay consistent in that evolution when people are going to latch on from your past or people around you are going to latch on and say, that's not the real Christopher Rausch?
My why. And that's something we really haven't talked a lot about. We talked about it a little bit with legacy, but when you have a big enough why, you have a big enough how. And when I look at my son, who's 3 years old, and I know that I'm 51 years old, and I know that technology is going to make me live longer than 74 or whatever the average life expectancy is. But when I look at my son, I want to be the best example for him. I want to show the fact that you can evolve and you can change. And my goal is to be the best dad I can be the best father I can be, the best husband I can be, the best humanitarian I can be. And so each day it keeps me consistent for the fact that I walk my talk. You know, we come on here and we do these things and you said it yourself. And I told somebody this, that I said, any coach out there who thinks they have it all together is full of shit because most coaches get into this stuff because they're just trying to figure out the nuggets. You watch anybody who has a show and they're asking the question of what about this or what about that? They're trying to figure it out. Like, you know, when people are saying what makes people unstoppable, you know, there's programs about that. And they dive into David Goggins. They dive into the James the Iron Man Cowboy. They dive into all these people, which I did. I was like, okay, what is that? They're just trying to figure it out for themselves. So my point to that, Scott, and I know you wanted a 2-second one, but is to just to embrace, just to put one foot forward every single day. Just take one action that moves you closer to the person that you're supposed to be and what you want to be. And as you start doing that, you start to develop more confidence. You start gaining momentum and it starts feeling better and better. You drink more water. You go for a walk. You eat a little bit better. You wake up the next morning, you get a good night's sleep. You wake up the next morning, you feel a little bit better. You drink some more water. You go for a little bit more walk. You read a book. You have a conversation with somebody. You start doing that progressively and you start gaining momentum. You start feeling better. You start acting better and you start looking at things differently because Dr. Wayne Dyer says when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change, which is so massively profound. If you're constantly looking at things from a victim mindset and what is somebody else going to do for me and, you know, I want mine and all that other stuff, you're going to continue to be miserable. But just take those actions. And I'll leave you with this, Scott. You're only limited by the parameters of your own mind. And when you think about that, you're only limited by the parameters of your own mind. So Henry Ford said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. The same exact thing goes. If you sit there and say, oh, I can't do that, then you're literally saying you won't. There's a great book out there. It's called What Not to Say When You Talk to Yourself. It's a massively important book. And you think about the words that we use. And I constantly doing that with my coaching clients, and they turn around. I have them put a rubber band around their wrist. I'm like, you catch yourself saying something we're trying to correct, and snap that and say the affirmative positive on that. And they're like, oh my God, Chris, I'm realizing that. And they just get energized and they get excited about what's next. And that's what we need to do. You need to be excited about what's next in your life.
100%. No, I'm so with you. I love, you remember Heather, we spoke to Heather Neary, and she is the modern day wizard. She's always talking about casting spells. And think of what a spell is and think of what magic is. It's nothing more than spelling. It's words. And so when you cast spells, you put words out there to manifest your wildest dreams. And so to end on this right now, Chris, just imagine this. If you say, I can, I will, and there's no stopping me, there's the unstoppable right there. That's it. There's nothing else in there. The minute you say I can't or I won't, you're right. Either way. So, Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. I love you, brother.
Pleasure.
And
I love you too, man.
I'm sure that everybody learned quite a bit today, and they're going to do well with this information. Take care, brother.
Yeah. You too, man. Thank you so much.
This episode of The Awakening You is brought to you by the Speaking to the Heart podcast network. If you'd like to experience our interactive show notes for this episode, we invite you to visit us at speakingtotheheart.org.